Imagine a single wooden horse standing silently outside the gates of an ancient city, its hollow belly packed with enemy soldiers waiting to strike. This isn't just a legend. It's one of history's most infamous deceptions, the Trojan horse, a masterclass in trickery that toppled an entire civilization overnight. But here's the startling truth. Deception isn't confined to ancient myths. It's woven into the very fabric of human history, shaping empires, toppling governments, and manipulating entire societies, often right under our noses. From the battlefields of antiquity to the corridors of modern power, the art of deception has been refined into an invisible architecture, a hidden framework of control that's as pervasive as it is powerful. That's what we're uncovering today, the 27 architectures of deception, a blueprint of the tricks, illusions, and psychological plays that have been used to manipulate nations and individuals for centuries. Think about it, how many of these tactics are still at work today, disguised as truth, lurking in the headlines we read or the policies we debate. Some are as obvious as a forged document or a staged event, while others are so subtle they reshape our beliefs without us ever noticing. This isn't just about history, it's about understanding the invisible strings that pull at our world, even now. So let's embark on a journey through time and strategy, where every twist reveals another layer of this shadowy craft. We'll explore how leaders have used false flags to justify wars, how propaganda machines rewrite reality, and how even the most skeptical minds can be swayed by carefully constructed illusions. By the end, you'll see history and maybe even today's world through a different lens, one that exposes the hidden frameworks behind what we're told to believe. Ready to pull back the curtain, let's begin. The first architecture of deception might seem counterintuitive. It's not about hiding your intentions, but rather flaunting them in plain sight, wrapped in the guise of friendship. Take Napoleon, a master of this craft. He didn't just defeat armies on the battlefield. He dismantled them by weaving webs of false alliances, convincing rivals he was their staunchest ally, until the moment he turned on them. These weren't just broken promises, they were psychological landmines designed to erode trust long after the betrayal. Sun Tzu put it perfectly in The Art of War. All warfare is based on deception. And what's more deceptive than a handshake that's really a trap? This tactic isn't confined to ancient battlefields. The 20th century saw one of the most infamous examples, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the surface, it was a non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, a public promise of peace. But behind closed doors, it secretly carved up Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, a prelude to invasion. The pact didn't just buy time, it lulled the world into a false sense of security, making the eventual betrayal even more devastating, and the ripple effects were staggering. Distrust between nations deepened, alliances fractured, and the stage was set for a war that would reshape the globe. Fast forward to today, and the mirage of false alliances still thrives. In corporate boardrooms, strategic partnerships can mask hostile takeovers. In modern diplomacy, smiling summits often hide backroom power plays. The psychological impact is always the same. Once trust is weaponized, every future agreement is shadowed by doubt. It's a lesson written in blood and ink across centuries. The most dangerous lies aren't the ones whispered in darkness, but the ones proclaimed in broad daylight, draped in the robes of goodwill. And if deception can hide in something as intangible as a promise, imagine what it can do with something concrete like a building, a border, or even an entire city. Walls have always been more than just stone and mortar. They're psychological barriers, symbols of invincibility. But what if those towering defenses were nothing more than an elaborate stage set? Take Constantinople, the legendary city that repelled invaders for centuries. Its Theodosian walls weren't just thick, they were riddled with hidden passages and decoy fortifications, a labyrinth designed to confuse attackers. Invaders would breach the outer layer, only to find themselves funneled into kill zones or trapped between false fronts. The real genius, the city's engineers built weaknesses into certain sections on purpose, baiting enemies into striking where the defenses were strongest. It wasn't just architecture, it was theater, with every brick playing a role in the illusion. The same principle echoed centuries earlier at Troy. While the Trojan horse gets all the attention, the city's walls were part of the deception too. Ancient accounts describe hidden sally ports, small, disguised gates used for surprise attacks, that let defenders slip out undetected, turning the tide of sieges. The lesson was clear: a fortress isn't just about being impenetrable, it's about controlling perception. Make the enemy believe they've found a vulnerability, and you've already won half the battle. Fast forward to today, and the same tactics live on in digital battlegrounds. Cybersecurity experts call it honeypotting, creating fake network vulnerabilities to lure hackers into traps. A company might leave a seemingly unprotected server exposed, only for attackers to find it's a mirrored maze, tracking their every move. Even social media platforms use shadow banning and algorithmic illusions to make certain content appear invisible, a modern-day hidden gate. The goal remains unchanged: let your opponent think they've outsmarted you, and you control the game. But what happens when the deception isn't just about hiding weaknesses, but erasing entire armies from existence? That's where the shadows grow deeper. History's greatest commanders understood a fundamental truth: sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't strength, it's invisibility. Take Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who outmaneuvered Rome not just with swords but with shadows. At the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 217 BC, he didn't just defeat a Roman army, he made 30,000 soldiers vanish into the mist. Polybius, the ancient historian, describes how Hannibal lured the Romans into a narrow pass shrouded by fog, concealing his forces along the high ground until the moment of ambush. The Romans marched blindly into a slaughter they never saw coming, their formations collapsing under attacks from directions they couldn't anticipate. This wasn't just a victory of force, it was a masterpiece of misdirection, turning the very landscape into a weapon. The vanishing army trick relies on one chilling principle: perception is reality. Ancient generals used terrain like a magician's curtain. Mountains hid troop movements, forests muffled the sound of marching, and rivers erased tracks. But this tactic didn't disappear with bronze armor. Modern militaries have refined it into an art form. Camouflage netting mimics foliage so precisely that entire battalions blend into jungles. Electronic warfare creates ghost armies on radar screens, false signals that mimic troop concentrations hundreds of miles from their real locations. Even satellite imagery can be spoofed, rendering bases or movements invisible to orbiting eyes. The question isn't just, where is the enemy? It's, does the enemy exist where I'm looking? Yet the most unsettling twist isn't on the battlefield. This same architecture of deception thrives in our daily lives. Social media algorithms create echo chambers that hide opposing viewpoints as effectively as mountain fog hid Hannibal's troops. Misinformation campaigns flood zones with so much noise that truth becomes impossible to triangulate. When a viral post can vanish without a trace, or a bot army can make a fringe idea seem mainstream, we're all marching through our own Lake Trasimene, vulnerable to ambushes we never anticipated. The terrain has changed, but the strategy remains timeless. Control what people see, and you control what they believe. And if disappearing armies teach us anything, it's that the most dangerous threats aren't the ones we faced, but the ones we never notice until it's too late. Rumors have always been more than just gossip. They are the invisible daggers of power, slipping through defenses no wall can stop. Catherine II of Russia knew this well. When her grip on the throne wavered, she didn't just raise armies, she weaponized whispers. Stories spread through salons and taverns, painting her rivals as unstable or treasonous, eroding their support long before any confrontation. By the time her opponents realized they'd been outmaneuvered, their alliances had crumbled under the weight of suspicion. Machiavelli saw this playbook centuries earlier. The great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances, he wrote, as though they were realities. Control the narrative, and you control the crowd. The 20th century sharpened this tool to a razor's edge. During World War II, Allied planes rained not just bombs but paper millions of propaganda leaflets designed to sow doubt among enemy troops. One infamous example, the Safe Conduct Pass, a slip of paper promising humane treatment for surrendering German soldiers. Whether the promise was genuine didn't matter. The rumor alone weakened morale, turning comrades into potential defectors in each other's eyes. Disinformation didn't need to be believed by everyone, just enough to fracture trust. Today, the Whisper network has gone digital. Social media algorithms amplify outrage and conspiracy, crafting echo chambers where rumors harden into facts overnight. A viral claim about a politician's scandal or a corporation's misdeeds can trend globally before the truth has time to lace its boots. The mechanics are different, but the effect is identical. Reality bends to the loudest narrative, not the most accurate. Ever shared a headline without clicking the article? That's the modern version of Catherine's whispers, unknowingly passing along a weapon you didn't stop to inspect. And if mere words can reshape empires, imagine the havoc possible when deception is stamped onto the very currency in your pocket. Money has always been more than just coins and paper. It's the lifeblood of nations, the invisible thread holding societies together. But what happens when that thread is cut with a blade of deception? During the American Revolution, the British didn't just fight colonists with muskets and cannons. They waged economic warfare by flooding the colonies with counterfeit currency. Imagine a farmer trading his crops for what he thought was honest pay, only to discover his hard-earned money was worthless. The chaos was catastrophic. Prices skyrocketed as trust in the continental dollar evaporated. Markets collapsed under the weight of suspicion, with neighbors questioning every transaction. Benjamin Franklin himself lamented how counterfeit bills became a moral epidemic, corroding the very fabric of the fledgling nation. This wasn't just sabotage, it was psychological annihilation. The British knew that undermining a currency meant undermining faith in the revolution itself. If people couldn't trust the money in their pockets, how could they trust the cause it represented? The tactic was so effective that historians credit it as one of the key factors prolonging the war, but the British were far from the last to weaponize money. Jump ahead to World War II, and you'll find Operation Bernhard, the Nazis' audacious plot to destabilize Britain by flooding the global market with fake pound sterling. Prisoners in concentration camps, forced to become master forgers, produced nearly £130 million in counterfeit bills, enough to crash the British economy if released all at once. The plan was chillingly simple: bankrupt an enemy without firing a shot. While the Nazis never fully deployed the scheme, the specter of their economic atom bomb haunted post-war financial systems, leading to sweeping reforms in currency design. Fast forward to today, and the battlefield has shifted to the digital frontier. Cryptocurrency scams now employ the same principles of deception, just without the printing presses. Fake initial coin offerings lure investors with promises of revolutionary technology, only to vanish overnight with billions. Pump and dump schemes artificially inflate the value of obscure tokens before insiders cash out, leaving ordinary holders with worthless digital scraps. The tools have changed, but the game remains the same. Exploit trust, create chaos, and disappear before the damage is discovered. Yet here's the most unsettling question of all. What if the greatest deceptions aren't hidden in vaults or blockchains, but right in front of us, woven into the systems we use every day? Sometimes the most devastating blow comes not from standing your ground, but from appearing to break and run. Picture the blood-soaked fields of Cannae in 216 BC, where Hannibal didn't just defeat the Roman legions, he orchestrated their annihilation by making weakness his weapon. As the Roman forces pushed forward, his center deliberately collapsed, luring them into a deadly embrace. What seemed like victory became a slaughterhouse, with Carthaginian cavalry closing the trap from behind. 20 years later, Julius Caesar would employ the same tactic against the Gauls, writing in his commentaries how feigned retreats excited the enemy's pursuit with the hope of victory, only to ambush them when their ranks were disordered. The lesson was clear: when your enemy believes they've won, they stop thinking, and that's when they're most vulnerable. This bait-and-switch strategy transcends ancient battlefields. Modern marketing thrives on it. Ever clicked on a headline promising one weird trick, only to find yourself funneled into a 20-step sales pitch? That's Cannae in a digital age, luring you in with the illusion of simplicity, then encircling you with upcharges and subscriptions. Retailers dangle limited-time offers that vanish once you're in the door, redirecting you to pricier alternatives. The psychology is identical. Create a false sense of advantage, and the target willingly walks into the trap. But what happens when the deception isn't just tactical, when entire identities are fabricated? Consider the Cold War's legend builders, spies who spent years constructing fake lives, apartments, jobs, even friendships to sell their cover stories. Every detail, from grocery receipts to staged family photos, existed to convince enemies they were someone they weren't. Today, social media bots operate on the same principle, amassing fake followers and fabricated histories to lend credibility to disinformation. A profile with 10,000 followers seems authoritative, even if everyone is a digital ghost. The most unsettling part: we're all vulnerable to the bait and switch in ways we rarely notice. That viral post claiming to expose a secret truth, the job offer that seems too good to be true, they're all modern versions of Hannibal's feigned retreat, designed to make us charge headlong into a trap of our own making. Because the oldest rule of deception still holds: the best way to control someone is to let them believe they're in control. History has no shortage of men who wore crowns they never rightfully earned, but perhaps none played the role more brazenly than Perkin Warbeck. In the 1490s, this Flemish merchant's son stepped onto the political stage claiming to be Richard of Shrewsbury. The younger prince famously vanished from the Tower of London. With nothing but audacity and a passing resemblance, Warbeck convinced courts across Europe he was the rightful king of England. How? Through a masterclass in manufactured legitimacy. Supporters staged public recognitions, where nobles tearfully embraced him as their long-lost prince. Coins were minted bearing his false title. Even his mannerisms were coached to mimic Plantagenet royalty, turning performance into perceived truth. For 8 years, he bluffed his way through invasions and alliances, proving a throne could be stolen with nothing but conviction and stagecraft. Fast forward 5 centuries and the tools have evolved, but the blueprint remains identical. Modern deepfake technology lets anyone with software graft a politician's face onto another's body, syncing their lips to fabricated speeches. A 2023 viral video of a compromising Ukrainian president was debunked as AI-generated, yet not before it sowed confusion during a fragile ceasefire. These aren't just high-tech hoaxes, they're digital heirs to Warbeck's playbook. Where pretender kings once relied on rumor and pageantry, today's imposters weaponize algorithms to fabricate reality itself. The goal is always the same: exploit our craving for narrative. Humans will believe an elegant lie faster than a messy truth, especially when it fits what they want to be real. But the most dangerous imposters aren't those who fake identities, they're the ones who fake threats. Consider the 17th century Popish plot, where fabricated letters exposed a non-existent Catholic conspiracy to assassinate England's king. The lie, backed by staged evidence and coached witnesses, sparked nationwide panic, executions, and anti-Catholic riots. It was terrorism without terrorists, fear weaponized through fiction. Today, that same architecture fuels viral conspiracy theories. A single manipulated photo of an empty grocery shelf can trigger real-world shortages as people hoard supplies. A politician's deep-faked rant can ignite protests before fact-checkers intervene. The chilling takeaway: it doesn't matter if the monster under the bed is real, only that enough people believe it's there. And once that fear takes root, the puppeteers need only point it where they choose. There's a twisted genius to making your enemies believe they're under attack by shadows you created yourself. Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for Dracula, mastered this dark art. When Ottoman forces approached his territory in 1462, they found a forest of corpses, 20,000 impaled Turkish prisoners lining the roads. But here's the chilling twist: many were already dead before Vlad staged the display. He'd exhumed bodies from plague pits, dressing them in enemy uniforms to fabricate the illusion of a massacre. The message wasn't just brutality, it was calculated theater. By the time the Ottomans reached Targov East, their morale had shattered. They retreated without a fight, convinced Vlad's forces were invincible. The Romans called this terror fictus manufactured dread. Tacitus recounts how legions would burn abandoned villages along Germanic borders, leaving just enough survivors to spread tales of Roman ferocity. The goal wasn't conquest, it was paralysis by imagination. False flags have only grown more sophisticated with time. In 1939, Nazi operatives staged a Polish attack on a German radio station by dressing concentration camp prisoners in Polish uniforms, then gunning them down as evidence to justify invading Poland. Modern intelligence agencies call these sting operations, hacking their own systems to blame rivals, or funding extremist groups to discredit political movements. The playbook remains unchanged. Craft a crisis so convincing, your enemy either surrenders preemptively or retaliates in ways that serve your agenda. But perhaps the most pervasive phantom menaces live in the realm of belief. Medieval popes declared crusades against imagined heresies, while Reformation-era princes accused neighbors of witchcraft to seize their lands. Today, viral conspiracy theories about stolen elections or deep state coups follow the same blueprint, manufacturing threats to justify real-world actions. When faith or fear is the weapon, evidence becomes irrelevant. The most enduring deceptions aren't those we see through, but those we feel in our bones long after logic dismisses them. What if the gods themselves became puppeteers in history's greatest deceptions? The Oracle of Delphi understood this power intimately. Perched on her tripod above volcanic fissures, breathing in ethylene vapors, she'd deliver prophecies so perfectly ambiguous they became traps dressed as divine wisdom. When King Croesus asked whether to attack Persia, she replied, "If you cross the Holys River, a great empire will fall." He did, and it was his own. The genius wasn't in the prediction but the phrasing, a linguistic sleight of hand that made destruction seem inevitable only in hindsight. This wasn't just fortune-telling, it was psychological warfare with a celestial mask. Then there's Cassandra, the Trojan prophetess cursed to see the future but never be believed. Her warnings about the wooden horse were dismissed as madness not because the truth wasn't clear, but because people preferred comforting lies. Herein lies the dark heart of divine deception. It preys not on ignorance but on desire. Humans will cling to a flattering falsehood long after rejecting an inconvenient truth. Modern cult leaders wield this same architecture with chilling precision. Consider Jim Jones' infamous White Knights drills, where he staged fake attacks on his followers, then positioned himself as their sole protector against imagined persecutors. Like the Delphic priests, he weaponized uncertainty, blurring reality until only his version remained. Or Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate, who twisted NAS, a Hale-Bopp comet footage, into proof of a trailing alien spacecraft, leveraging scientific imagery to legitimize fantasy. The tools evolve psychology replaces vapors, social media amplifies charisma, but the core mechanism remains unchanged. Cloak human manipulation in the sacred or the scientific, and resistance crumbles. Which brings us to the most insidious twist, when deception hijacks not mysticism, but empiricism itself. The tobacco industry's 70-year campaign to manufacture doubt about cancer links didn't deny science. It perverted it, funding enough skewed studies to create artificial controversy. Climate change skeptics employ the same playbook today, weaponizing the occasional outlier study to discredit overwhelming consensus. The strategy mirrors Delphi's ambiguities: muddy the waters until any truth seems uncertain, and people will believe what comforts them most. Science, like prophecy, becomes dangerous not when it's wrong but when it's selectively right. Gold has always been more than a metal. It's the ultimate mirage, a shimmering promise of power that's driven men to madness for millennia. Enter the alchemists, history's most audacious con artists, who didn't just chase the dream of turning lead into gold, they sold it. In the courts of Renaissance Europe, these masters of deception performed elaborate shows for wealthy patrons, using chemical tricks to mimic the real thing. One favorite method involved hollowing out iron nails, filling them with gold dust, then sealing the ends with lead. When dipped into magic solutions, often just acidic compounds, the outer layer would dissolve, revealing the glittering core. The patron would gasp at the transformation, emptying their coffers to fund further research that always seemed one breakthrough away. Paracelsus, the famed alchemist physician, saw through the ruse early. "Deception is the truest art," he wrote, "for it reveals not the limits of nature but the depths of human desire." His words cut to the heart of the scam. Alchemy wasn't about chemistry, it was about psychology. The marks weren't fooled because the tricks were flawless, they were fooled because they wanted to believe. Fast forward to today, and the alchemist's playbook thrives in modern pseudoscience. Miracle weight loss pills melt fat with the same theatrical flair as those iron nails, using before and after photos doctored with lighting and angles. Cryptocurrency charlatans promise to transform small investments into fortunes, leveraging the same desperate hope that once filled royal treasuries. Even the language echoes the past, where alchemists spoke of the philosopher's stone, modern grifters peddle disruptive technologies or quantum healing. The tools have changed, but the trick remains identical. Sell the sizzle, not the steak, and vanish before the illusion fades. Yet there's a deeper layer to this deception, one that transcends fraud and enters the realm of art. Because every great con is, at its core, a performance. Consider the Renaissance painters who secretly mixed ground glass into pigments to make their works shimmer under candlelight, or the architects who forced perspective in cathedrals to make ceilings appear higher. These weren't lies, they were carefully crafted illusions designed to evoke awe. The line between deception and artistry blurs when the audience willingly suspends disbelief, trading reality for something more sublime. Which raises an unsettling question. If we're so easily seduced by beauty masquerading as truth, what else might we be missing when the curtain finally falls? Art has always been more than pigment on canvas. It's a battlefield of hidden meanings, where brushstrokes whisper secrets meant only for certain eyes. Take Pieter Bruegel, The Elder's Tower of Babel, a masterpiece that seems to depict biblical folly at first glance. But look closer. The crumbling architecture mirrors the political fractures of 16th century Europe, with the chaotic construction echoing the Habsburg Empire's overreach. The painting wasn't just art, it was dissent disguised as piety, a subversive critique that could hang openly in palaces because its message was coded in symbolism. This was the Renaissance's open secret. Every still life, every portrait, every fresco could be a Trojan horse of ideas. Botticelli's Primavera hides even darker layers. On the surface, it's a celebration of spring, but the oranges in the grove weren't just decorative. To Florentine elites, they signaled the Medici family's monopoly on the citrus trade, a power flex disguised as mythology. Even the flowers under Venus' feet carried meaning. Purple irises symbolized royalty, while scattered violets hinted at fleeting loyalty. These weren't arbitrary choices. They were propaganda tools, teaching viewers who to admire and who to distrust without a single written word. The same language of symbols thrived in architecture. Venice's Doge's Palace seems like a celebration of Gothic grandeur, until you notice the columns on its lower level are spaced unevenly. This wasn't poor design, it was psychological warfare. The irregularity forced prisoners being led to trial to stumble, making them appear guilty before they even entered the courtroom. Every arch, every statue, every mosaic was part of an elaborate script, reinforcing who held power and why. Fast forward to today, and the game hasn't changed, only the canvas. Corporate logos use color psychology to manipulate perception, while social media influencers stage candid photos with carefully placed brand placements. A protest poster or meme template can carry layers of meaning visible only to those who know where to look. The most powerful messages aren't the ones shouted, they're the ones hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to decode them. Stepping into the Forbidden City wasn't just about crossing a threshold. It was a psychological gauntlet designed to strip visitors of any sense of power before they even laid eyes on the Emperor. The layout alone was a masterpiece of intimidation, a series of gates, courtyards, and bridges arranged along a rigid north-south axis, forcing dignitaries to traverse half a mile of symbolic obstacles. Each step reinforced hierarchy. The Meridian Gate's towering walls loomed like a physical manifestation of imperial authority, while the staggered courtyards created a disorienting effect. By the time you reached the throne room, you were already mentally subdued. Even the numbering held meaning. 9, the Emperor's sacred number, appeared everywhere. 9 rows of golden door nails, 9 mythical creatures perched on rooftops. This wasn't just architecture, it was a carefully choreographed dance of dominance where every brick whispered, "You are insignificant here." Versailles took a different approach, not with walls but with reflections. The Hall of Mirrors wasn't just a glittering showcase of French wealth. It was a psychological hall of mirrors in the truest sense. Imagine being a visiting noble, surrounded by infinite reflections of the Sun King's opulence, your own image multiplied and dwarfed by gilded splendor. The effect was deliberate, to make even the proudest aristocrat feel like a mere fragment in Louis XIV's grand design. And just like the Forbidden City, the palace's sprawling gardens served as a subtle weapon. Paths radiated outward from the king's bedroom like sunbeams, a not-so-subtle reminder that all power flowed from him. Yet the greatest deception might lie in the maps these empires left behind. Cartography was never just about accuracy, it was about control. Medieval European maps placed Jerusalem at the center of the world, surrounded by mythical beasts at the edges to deter exploration. British colonial maps redrew entire continents with exaggerated borders, making their holdings appear vaster than reality. Even today, the Mercator projection distorts the size of nations near the poles, inflating Europe and North America while shrinking Africa and South America. These weren't mistakes, they were choices. A map, like a palace, is a narrative one that tells you where to look and, more importantly, what to overlook. Now consider how these spatial deceptions live on in the digital age. Social media algorithms construct their own forbidden cities, walled gardens where dissent vanishes into shadow bands, and echo chambers reflect our beliefs back at us like Versailles mirrors. The mapmakers of Silicon Valley decide what we see and what remains hidden, turning geography into yet another illusion to be weaponized. After all, if you can control the terrain, whether physical or virtual, you've already won half the war. Even the most trusted tools of navigation maps were never immune to deception. Sailors in the age of exploration relied on charts that whispered of lands that never existed. Phantom islands like High Brassel, said to appear once every 7 years off Ireland's coast, or the elusive sandy island near New Caledonia, marked on maps as late as 2012, were more than mistakes. They were traps luring ships into treacherous waters or rival territories. The infamous Peary Rise map, drawn in 1513, tantalized historians with its uncanny depiction of Antarctica's coastline, a continent not officially discovered for another 3 centuries. But here's the twist: the map's accuracy might itself be a fabrication. Some scholars argue the landmass labeled as Antarctica could actually be South America's distorted coastline, stretched to fit the era's limited understanding of geography. The map's true power wasn't in its precision, but in its ambiguity, a Rorschach test that let each generation project their own myths onto its vellum. Cartographic deception evolved with technology. During World War II, British intelligence created entire fake neighborhoods on Nazi reconnaissance maps of London, using painted tarps and wooden decoys to misdirect bombers. Today, GPS spoofing achieves the same end with digital precision. In 2017, over 20 ships in the Black Sea suddenly found their navigation systems claiming they were inland near an airport 30 kilometers from the coast. The culprit, a shadowy signal hijacking their satellites, warping reality with a few lines of code. Modern militaries now train for location warfare, where battles are fought not over territory, but over whose maps the world believes. Yet the most insidious lies aren't about space, they're about time. Just as phantom islands manipulated perception of geography, phantom events can distort history. Soviet archivists famously airbrushed disgraced officials from photographs, erasing them from collective memory. But digital tools have democratized temporal deception. Deepfake videos can insert politicians into rallies they never attended, while blockchain timestamps can prove documents existed before they were actually created. When both maps and clocks can be hacked, the very coordinates of reality where we are and when we are become malleable. This reveals deception's ultimate frontier, not just altering what we see, but rewriting the rules of how we measure the world itself. Time itself can be stolen not with clocks or hourglasses, but with ink and authority. In October 1582, millions across Europe went to bed on the 4th only to wake up on the 15th. Pope Gregory XIII's calendar reform didn't just tweak dates, it erased 10 days overnight to correct Easter's drift from the spring equinox. Peasants rioted, demanding their lost days back, convinced landlords would charge them extra rent. Scholars protested that saints' feast days had vanished. But the real masterstroke was psychological. By decreeing this adjustment, the Church didn't just change how people measured time, it proved time itself was malleable in the hands of power. The Soviets took this idea further. In 1929, Stalin abolished the 7-day week, replacing it with 5-day cycles to break religious rhythms. Factories operated continuously, with workers assigned staggered rest days to ensure no collective Sabbath could form. Newspapers printed uninterrupted production charts where Sundays were just another workday. For a decade, the USSR lived in a temporal twilight zone until even Stalin admitted the human mind rebels against fabricated time. The experiment collapsed, but not before proving how calendars could be weapons of social engineering. Yet the most insidious timekeeping deception isn't in days erased, but in words redefined. Consider how collateral damage sanitizes civilian casualties, or how downsizing masks layoffs. The ancient Spartans perfected this linguistic sleight of hand, calling their brutal slave system the helot arrangement. Medieval tax collectors spoke of voluntary benevolences while seizing property. Every era has its verbal camouflage, phrases designed to numb the conscience by blurring reality. Nowhere is this more evident than in modern corporate speak. A pay cut becomes a salary adjustment. A monopoly rebrands as industry consolidation. These aren't just euphemisms, they're psychological airbags, softening the impact of actions that might otherwise spark outrage. The same principle applies to historical narratives. What one culture calls a revolution, another terms a rebellion. The events don't change, only the framing does. And if language can warp perception so effortlessly, what happens when the very words we use to describe truth are engineered to deceive? Diplomacy has always been a dance of shadows, where the most dangerous truths hide in plain sight, wrapped in words that mean one thing to the public and another to those who know how to listen. Take the infamous Zimmermann telegram of 1917, a masterpiece of double-edged language. On the surface, Germany's proposal to Mexico seemed straightforward. Join the war against the United States and in return, reclaim lost territories like Texas and Arizona. But buried in the phrasing was a sleight of hand. The telegram never explicitly promised those lands. It merely suggested they could be regained. This wasn't an offer. It was a trapdoor, giving Germany plausible deniability if the plot failed. When British intelligence intercepted and leaked the message, the ambiguity backfired spectacularly. Americans read it as a direct threat, while German diplomats scrambled to claim it had been misinterpreted. The lesson: in statecraft, words aren't just communication, they're camouflage, designed to be flexible enough to fit any outcome. This art of calculated ambiguity thrives in modern treaties. The Paris Climate Accords, for instance, are riddled with phrases like nationally determined contributions, a term vague enough to let every signatory claim compliance while dodging hard accountability. Or consider the UN's resolutions on territorial disputes, where status quo can mean anything from temporary ceasefire to permanent occupation, depending on who's interpreting it. The genius lies in the loopholes. These documents aren't written to clarify, but to give all sides enough verbal wiggle room to declare victory. even the simplest terms become chess pieces. During Cold War arms negotiations, the U.S. and USSR spent years debating whether a missile included cruise missiles, a distinction that could derail entire agreements. Yet the same linguistic trickery that stabilizes empires can also starve them. History's darkest pivot often comes when words fail and plates become battlefields. During Ireland's Great Famine, British officials described potato blight as an act of providence, framing mass starvation as inevitable rather than a result of policies that exported grain while millions starved. In Sudan, the term food relief masked a brutal calculus. Aid shipments were delayed or diverted to weaken rebel strongholds, turning bread into a tactical weapon. Today, economic sanctions operate on the same principle, blockading not ships but bank transfers, strangling access to food imports under the sterile language of trade restrictions. The most devastating codes aren't written in ciphers, but in the space between what's said and what's withheld. A treaty's fine print can ignite wars, and a loaf of bread can become a bullet if you know how to read between the lines. The banquet table has always been more than a place for feasting. It's the perfect stage for a silent kill. No family mastered this dark art better than the Borgias, Renaissance royalty who turned dinner parties into death traps. Their signature move, Cantarella, a poison rumored to be concocted from arsenic and decomposed pig liver, slipped into wine or sweetmeats at strategic moments. When Cardinal Orsini sat down to dine with Cesare Borgia in 1503, he left in a coffin his final meal laced with a substance so potent, its effects mimicked sudden illness, leaving no trace of foul play. The brilliance lay in the timing. By poisoning communal dishes selectively, the Borgias ensured only their targets fell ill, while other guests remained unharmed, deflecting suspicion. Their feasts became macabre theater, where every toast could be a death sentence and every course a calculated risk. But the Borgias weren't alone in weaponizing hospitality. Ancient Persians perfected the art of the poisoned chalice, while medieval nobles employed tasters not just for paranoia, but as political theater, a public display of trust that often masked private treachery. Even the Roman Emperor Claudius met his end after eating mushrooms tainted by his wife Agrippina, proving no title could shield you from a well-placed toxin. The lesson was clear: shared meals create vulnerability, and nothing disarms a rival faster than the illusion of camaraderie. Fast forward to today, and the poison has simply gone corporate. In 1982, 7 people in Chicago died after swallowing Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide, a crime that reshaped consumer safety with tamper-proof packaging. Supermarket shelves now bristle with seals and shrink wrap, silent testaments to the enduring fear of hidden toxins. Cybercriminals have digitized the threat, hacking into food supply chains to alter ingredient lists or contaminate batches remotely. A single altered line of code in a dairy plant system could turn milk into poison without a single Borgia lifting a finger. Yet nature itself might be the most prolific poisoner of all. Consider the humble pufferfish, its delicate flesh a delicacy in Japan, but one misstep in preparation, and its tetrodotoxin paralyzes diners mid-bite. Or the death-cap mushroom, indistinguishable from harmless varieties until liver failure sets in. These aren't just natural hazards, they're blueprints for bioweapons. During World War II, both Allied and Axis forces explored weaponizing botulinum toxin from spoiled food, while modern agrotourism threats imagine wheat rust or hoof and mouth disease unleashed on crops. The line between dinner plate and battlefield blurs when every bite carries potential payloads, which raises a chilling thought. If poison can hide in a truffle or a tablet, what else might be lurking in the systems we trust to keep us safe? Clouds became weapons long before conspiracy theories gave them names. During the Vietnam War's Operation Popeye, the U.S. military didn't just fight on jungles, they manipulated the skies themselves. From 1967 to 1972, aircraft seeded monsoons with silver iodide, extending Vietnam's rainy season by weeks to flood supply routes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The results were devastating. Mudslides swallowed trucks, rivers overflowed, and Viet Cong movements slowed to a crawl. Yet the real deception lay in the deniability. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara publicly dismissed weather modification as science fiction, even as classified documents revealed over 2,600 cloud seeding missions. The operation proved a chilling truth. The environment could be weaponized without fingerprints, turning nature into a silent accomplice. Decades later, the high-frequency active oral research program HARP ignited a different storm. Officially, this Alaska-based facility studied the ionosphere for communication research, but conspiracy theorists saw darker designs. Whispers spread of earthquake-inducing energy beams, climate control experiments, even mind control via electromagnetic waves. While scientists debunked these claims, the rumors themselves became a case study in modern deception. HARP's real power wasn't in weather manipulation, it was in how easily its existence became a canvas for collective paranoia. A single declassified patent for weather modification from the 1990s fueled endless speculation, proving that in the digital age, even the most mundane research could be weaponized by narrative. This evolution from physical weather wars to psychological climate warfare reveals deception's new frontier. Today, machine learning algorithms can generate hyper-realistic, deepfake weather forecasts, showing hurricanes that never formed or erasing floods from satellite imagery. During the 2020 Australian bushfires, manipulated images of burning koalas spread faster than fact-checkers could respond. Some altered to exaggerate damage, others fabricated entirely to sow panic. The tools have changed, but the strategy echoes Vietnam. Control the environment, and you control the battlefield. Only now, the clouds being seeded are digital, and the storms they unleash are measured in pixels and panic. Which raises an unsettling question: when technology can fabricate both rain and evidence of rain, how do we trust the sky itself? The answer lies not in the clouds, but in the hands guiding them. The cracking of the Enigma machine wasn't just a triumph of mathematics, it was a masterclass in turning deception against itself. For years, Nazi Germany's cipher system seemed unbreakable, its rotors capable of creating 159 quintillion possible settings for every message. But Allied cryptographers discovered a fatal flaw. The machine's very perfection became its undoing. Because Enigma couldn't encrypt a letter as itself, meaning an A would never output as an A. Analysts could exploit this quirk to reverse engineer patterns. The real breakthrough came when they realized human error was the weakest link. German operators, forced to send weather reports at fixed times, often reused predictable phrases like Heil Hitler or nothing to report, creating cribs that let codebreakers test their theories. What appeared to be an impenetrable fortress of math crumbled under the weight of routine and repetition. Modern encryption faces eerily similar vulnerabilities. Today's hackers don't just brute force passwords, they exploit the human element, phishing emails mimicking trusted contacts, or malware hidden in mundane software updates. The infamous WannaCry ransomware attack of 2017 didn't rely on cutting-edge code. It preyed on organizations that had delayed patching known Windows vulnerabilities. Like the Enigma operators, we create our own weaknesses through complacency, assuming technology alone will protect us. Even quantum computing, poised to crack current encryption methods, may fall victim to its own hubris. Researchers already warn that quantum keys could be compromised by flaws in their random number generators. The lesson is timeless. The strongest locks are useless if someone leaves the key under the mat. Yet the most fascinating twist lies in how encryption shaped and was shaped by espionage. During the Cold War, the CIA's Acoustic Kitty program attempted to turn cats into living surveillance devices, implanting microphones in their ears and transmitters in their tails. The project failed spectacularly when the first feline agent wandered into traffic, but the premise revealed a deeper truth. Spies have always blurred the line between tool and weapon. Soviet dissidents smuggled microfilm in chess pieces, while British double agents hid Morse transmitters in hollowed-out books. Today's equivalents are far subtler. A smartwatch's Bluetooth signal can be hijacked to steal phone data, or a laser pointed at a window can pick up conversations from the vibrations of the glass. These aren't just technological evolutions, they're psychological ones. The best spies, like the best cryptographers, understand that secrets aren't just about hiding information, they're about controlling perception. A double agent doesn't merely pass false data, they craft an entire persona, feeding just enough truth to seem credible while steering their target toward catastrophic miscalculations. In the digital age, this theater plays out in phishing scams where a single misplaced trust click can compromise an entire network. The real encryption isn't in the code, it's in the mind of the person who believes they're safe. The most devastating betrayals don't come from strangers, they come from the inner circle, the trusted advisor who's been whispering secrets to the enemy for years. Kim Philby embodied this nightmare. As a high-ranking British intelligence officer during the Cold War, he had access to the West's most sensitive operations, while secretly reporting everything to Moscow. His treachery wasn't just about stolen documents, it was psychological sabotage. For nearly 2 decades, he steered investigations away from Soviet moles, tipped off targets before raids, and even ensured doomed missions went forward to waste British resources. The brilliance of his deception lay in its banality. He didn't fit the spy stereotype, no dramatic disguises or dead drops, just a tweed-clad bureaucrat with a knack for earning trust. That's the true power of a mole. They don't infiltrate systems, they become the system. Modern corporate espionage operates on the same principles. Imagine a mid-level executive at a tech firm, quietly forwarding prototype designs to a competitor's burner email. Or a pharmaceutical researcher copying formulas onto a thumb drive disguised as a keychain. These aren't shadowy figures scaling fences, they're employees with security badges blending into daily routines. The most damaging corporate breaches often trace back to insiders exploiting trust, like the Volkswagen engineer who helped rig emissions tests or the Boeing contractor accused of stealing proprietary files for China. The tools have evolved. Cloud leaks replace briefcase swaps, but the human vulnerability remains unchanged. Yet moles aren't just individual actors, they're nodes in vast networks. During the Russian Revolution, Lenin's agents infiltrated the Tsarist police so thoroughly that they were intercepting their own wanted posters. The CIA's Operation Snow White in the 1970s saw Scientology operatives penetrate over 100 government agencies to purge unfavorable records. These weren't lone wolves but orchestrated campaigns to hollow out institutions from within, which reveals the ultimate architecture of this deception. Revolutions aren't just fought in streets, they're staged in filing cabinets and server rooms long before the first protest erupts. When a regime's own clerks start altering records or its bankers quietly divert funds, collapse isn't an explosion, it's a slow bleed no one notices until it's too late. The most successful revolutions often begin not with a manifesto, but with a secretary subtly misfiling the wrong document. Nothing destabilizes a nation faster than a revolution that was never real, a performance of regime change where the actors take their cues from foreign scripts. The Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 wasn't just a failed military operation. It was a meticulously staged theater of rebellion, complete with CIA-trained Cuban exiles playing the role of freedom fighters and fabricated radio broadcasts pretending to be transmissions from a grassroots uprising. The plan relied on a classic deception: make the world believe the Cuban people were rising against Castro, and the international community might rally behind the illusion. But the curtain fell too soon. The so-called popular revolt had no popular support. The radio stations were traced to offshore boats, and the entire operation collapsed within days. The real lesson wasn't in the failure, it was in the blueprint. A fake revolution doesn't need to succeed. It just needs to create enough chaos to justify the next move. This playbook didn't end in Cuba. In 1953, the CIA orchestrated the overthrow of Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mossadegh, replacing him with the Shah, a leader more amenable to Western oil interests. The operation, codenamed Ajax, used paid protesters, staged riots, and even planted false stories in local newspapers to make the coup appear organic. Decades later, declassified documents revealed how British intelligence had coined the term Operation Boot for their role, a darkly literal name for kicking out an inconvenient leader. The pattern repeated in Guatemala, Chile, and beyond: fabricate dissent, amplify it through media, then position your puppet as the only solution to the crisis you engineered. But the most insidious shift isn't in how governments stage coups, it's in how modern media distorts reality without a single soldier landing on a beach. Today's information wars don't need puppet leaders, they need viral narratives. A 2019 study by Stanford researchers exposed how Twitter bots masquerading as Venezuelan citizens amplified anti-government hashtags, creating the illusion of mass protests where none existed. During the Arab Spring, both activists and governments used staged footage, old clips repurposed as current atrocities, to sway global opinion. The tools have evolved from radio transmitters to algorithmically boosted tweets, but the goal remains unchanged: manufacture the perception of revolution, and the truth becomes irrelevant. When every screen can be weaponized, the most dangerous rebellions aren't fought in streets, they're fought in feeds, where reality is just another layer of code waiting to be hacked. Newspapers didn't just report the news in 1898, they invented it. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor, headlines across America didn't wait for evidence. William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal and Joseph Pulitzer's World competed to out-sensationalize each other, printing lurid illustrations of Spanish saboteurs that never existed and fabricating interviews with imaginary witnesses. Hearst famously wired his illustrator in Cuba, "You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war," and he did. Circulation soared as the public swallowed stories of Spanish atrocities wholesale, from poisoned wells to bayoneted children. The truth: the Maine likely sank due to an onboard coal bunker fire, but by then, remember, the Maine had already rallied a nation into battle. This wasn't journalism, it was mass hallucination engineered by ink and paper. Fast forward to today, and the mirage has simply migrated to screens. The term fake news might feel modern, but its DNA traces back to those Gilded Age newsrooms. Viral headlines now exploit the same psychological triggers: outrage, tribalism, and the addictive rush of moral certainty. A 2018 MIT study found falsehoods spread 6 times faster than truth on social media, not because we're all gullible, but because deception is designed to outperform reality. Russian troll farms didn't invent disinformation, they industrialized it, weaponizing the same tactics Hearst used to sell papers, now optimized for clicks and shares. The Spanish-American War proved a lie could start a conflict. Today's digital fog proves lies can sustain endless ones. Yet the most insidious shift isn't in politics, it's in entertainment. Reality TV confessional booths edit tears into false redemption arcs. True crime documentaries splice unrelated footage to imply guilt where none exists. Even cooking shows stage, surprise, ingredient shortages for drama. The line between news and narrative blurs when both are rated by engagement algorithms. Historian Daniel Boorstin warned of this in 1961. We risk becoming the first people in history to drown in a sea of illusions we ourselves invented. The irony, the very technologies that expose deception also refine it. Deepfake satire blurs into propaganda, while AI-generated anchors deliver news with flawless sincerity. The lesson isn't that truth is dead, it's that truth now competes in an arena where deception wears its face, speaks in its voice, and knows exactly which buttons to press. Casablanca wasn't just a love story, it was a weapon. When Rick Blaine toasted to America in that smoky Moroccan bar, the scene did more than move audiences, it moved public opinion. Released in 1942 at the height of World War II, the film was secretly funded by the U.S. Office of War Information, which scripted subtle pro-Allied messages into dialogue and imagery. Even the song, As Time Goes By, became an unofficial anthem of resilience, its melody smuggled past censors who'd banned sentimental tunes as demoralizing. This wasn't entertainment, it was emotional engineering. The OWI's manual stated plainly, every film must aid in the war effort. From John Wayne's heroic Marines in sands of Iwo Jima to Disney's Der Fuhrer's face mocking Hitler, Hollywood became a factory of morale, blurring the line between art and agenda. Fast forward to today, and the propaganda hasn't disappeared. It's just swapped uniforms. Modern blockbusters like Top Gun, Maverick received Pentagon support in exchange for script approval, ensuring fighter jets gleamed like superheroes while drone warfare's ethical dilemmas stayed off-screen. But the real masterstroke lies in product placement. James Bond doesn't just drive an Aston Martin, he sells it, with car companies paying millions for their models to outrun bullets. A study in JAMA Pediatrics found children consumed 45% more snacks after seeing them in movies, proving popcorn isn't just for watching films, it's part of the show. Corporations learned from wartime playbooks, replacing patriotic slogans with brand loyalty. Tobacco companies paid to have cigarettes dangled from Humphrey Bogart's lips, while Apple's devices appear in films so frequently, they've become visual shorthand for innovation. The most insidious part, unlike propaganda, these ads don't announce themselves. When Iron Man cracks a joke while drinking a Coca-Cola, the laugh makes the logo stick. The lesson is clear, whether selling democracy or soft drinks, the best lies don't feel like persuasion. They feel like pleasure, and when the credits roll, the real story is just beginning. Enron didn't just cook the books, they turned accounting into alchemy, transforming debt into profit with a flick of creative paperwork. At the height of their deception in the late 1990s, they employed a maze of off-balance sheet entities with names like Raptor and Jedi, shell companies designed to hide billions in losses while inflating stock prices. The brilliance and audacity lay in the illusion of legitimacy. These weren't backroom schemes, they were signed off by top auditors, blessed by Wall Street analysts, and even praised in Harvard Business School case studies. CEO Jeffrey Skilling's infamous mark-to-market accounting let the company book projected future profits as immediate revenue, turning pipelines and power plants into fantasy numbers on a spreadsheet. The real magic trick, convincing the world that smoke and mirrors were solid gold. But Enron was just one act in a much larger circus. Today, the corporate shell game has gone global, with multinationals stashing trillions in offshore tax havens like the Cayman Islands or Bermuda. A single building in the British Virgin Islands, Ugland House, serves as the legal address for over 20,000 companies, a modern-day Trojan horse for wealth. Tech giants shift patents to Irish subsidiaries, pharmaceutical firms license their own drugs to Luxembourg shells, and retail empires route profits through Dutch sandwich structures. The mechanisms are more sophisticated, but the principle remains the same. Create layers of abstraction until money becomes untraceable. Now, artificial intelligence is rewriting the rules of this game entirely. Machine learning algorithms can optimize tax evasion strategies in real time, scanning global regulations to exploit loopholes faster than any human team. Generative AI drafts convincing legal documents for phantom entities, while blockchain anonymizes transactions beyond any auditor's reach. In 2023, a deepfake CFO of a German energy firm nearly authorized a $50 million transfer before employees noticed the voice was synthesized. The line between clever accounting and outright fraud blurs when algorithms can design deception at scale. Yet the most unsettling twist isn't in the technology, it's in how willingly we participate. Every time we click accept on terms we don't read or shrug at corporate doublespeak like right-sizing instead of layoffs, we become complicit in the illusion. Because the ultimate architecture of deception isn't built in boardrooms or code, it's built in the gap between what we know and what we choose to ignore. A politician takes the stage, delivering a fiery speech promising sweeping reforms, except those words were never spoken. The lips move, the voice resonates, but every syllable was generated by algorithms trained on hours of footage. Welcome to the era of deepfake democracy, where artificial intelligence doesn't just mimic voices, it hijacks them, crafting political narratives no human ever endorsed. In 2024, as multiple nations brace for pivotal elections, security agencies warn that AI-generated disinformation could flood social media with fabricated endorsements, falsified debates, and even leaked audio of candidates confessing to crimes they never committed. The danger isn't just in the deception, it's in the reaction. Imagine a deepfake video triggering stock market crashes, inciting violence, or derailing diplomatic talks before fact-checkers can intervene. The irony is brutal. The same tools that democratized creativity, allowing indie filmmakers to resurrect historical figures or dub movies flawlessly, now threaten democracy itself. Researchers at Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology found that just $250 and a weekend of training could produce convincing fake speeches. One experiment cloned a senator's voice to recite Shakespeare. Another spliced a governor's face onto a body denying climate change. The most insidious fakes aren't the outlandish ones. They're the subtle tweaks, like a candidate's speech edited to replace "We must invest in renewables" with "We must ignore renewables," shifting meaning with surgical precision. But here's the twist. The antidote isn't just technology, it's skepticism. Estonia, long a target of cyber warfare, trains schoolchildren to spot manipulated media through digital hygiene drills. Journalists now analyze videos for tells like unnatural blinking or mismatched shadows, while blockchain timestamps verify authentic footage. The real battleground is attention itself. Social media platforms could prioritize content with verified origins, but users must also slow down. Before sharing that shocking clip, ask, does the source have a history of accuracy? Are multiple outlets reporting the same? Would this candidate really say this here? The deepest deception isn't the lie you believe, it's the one you spread without thinking. In an age where reality can be rewritten with a keystroke, the most revolutionary act might just be pausing long enough to doubt. Carl Sagan once offered humanity a lifeline in the sea of deception, a baloney detection kit. Not a physical toolbox, but a mental framework to dissect claims before they take root. His rules were simple yet revolutionary. Demand evidence, question authority, watch for logical fallacies, and above all, resist the allure of certainty. These weren't just academic principles, they were survival tactics in a world where lies often dress as truths. Take the infamous Piltdown Man hoax of 1912. For decades, scientists hailed a skull found in England as the missing link in human evolution, until someone applied Sagan's toolkit. Fluorine testing revealed the bones were a medieval human skull grafted onto an orangutan's jaw, stained to look ancient. The deception crumbled under simple scrutiny, proving even experts can be fooled by a convincing story. Modern fact-checkers wield digital versions of Sagan's kit. Reverse image searches expose staged photos, like the viral shark on the highway during Hurricane Harvey, actually a photoshopped image from a 2005 flood in India. Geolocation tools debunk fake war zones by analyzing shadows in satellite images to verify timing. Even audio forensics can detect AI-generated voices by spotting unnatural pauses in speech patterns machines still struggle to replicate. But the real power lies not in the tools themselves, but in the habit of using them. During the 2020 US election, a fabricated video of a ballot box fire spread rapidly until amateur sleuths noticed the flames lacked smoke damage to surrounding objects, a detail only visible when someone bothered to look. History's greatest skeptics often paid dearly for their doubt. When Athenagoras of Athens questioned the existence of Greek gods in the 2nd century, he didn't have Snopes or Google, just logic. If gods need temples, he reasoned, they must lack something mortals can provide. His writings were burned, but the method endured. Medieval Arab scholars like Alhazen debunked miraculous claims about burning mirrors by systematically testing angles and focal lengths. Renaissance astronomers proved comets weren't atmospheric phenomena by demonstrating their movement beyond the moon, all without telescopes, just meticulous observation. The common thread, deception thrives in the gap between curiosity and confirmation. We're wired to accept information that fits our worldview, what psychologists call confirmation bias. That's why the most effective fact-checking starts not with debunking, but with self-interrogation. Why do I want this to be true? When a 16th century pope needed to discredit Galileo's heliocentric model, he didn't attack the science, he reframed it as heresy, knowing faith would override facts for many. Today's misinformation campaigns exploit the same vulnerability, wrapping falsehoods in identity-affirming narratives. Spotting deception means recognizing when you're not just evaluating evidence, but defending a piece of yourself. Which reveals the toolkit's final tool, one Sagan never named but implied throughout: intellectual humility. The willingness to say, "I don't know," is the ultimate defense against deception, because it leaves no purchase for lies to cling to. When ancient Roman generals faced omens before battle, the shrewd ones consulted multiple augurs, knowing one might be bribed, but 3 unlikely to agree on a lie. Modern citizens face the same test, cross-referencing sources, embracing uncertainty, and remembering that the brightest minds in history weren't those with all the answers, but those who asked the right questions. History never truly repeats itself, but deception always rhymes. The Trojan horse and deepfake videos may be separated by 3,000 years, yet they share the same DNA: exploit trust, control perception, and vanish before the damage is discovered. What changes isn't the goal, but the tools. Where ancient spies relied on forged letters, modern ones manipulate pixels. Where alchemists dazzled patrons with chemical tricks, corporations dazzle shareholders with creative accounting. The stage evolves from parchment to social media feeds. The actors swap robes for suits, but the script remains hauntingly familiar. Consider the through line from Catherine the Great's whisper campaigns to today's viral disinformation. Both rely on the same psychological lever. Humans would rather believe a satisfying lie than an inconvenient truth. Medieval witch hunts needed only a few coerced confessions to ignite hysteria. Today's conspiracy theories need only a single viral post to bypass critical thought. The mechanisms differ: woodcut prints versus algorithmically boosted tweets, but the outcome mirrors itself eerily. Fear spreads faster than facts, and doubt becomes a weapon. Yet here's the crucial twist: deception's greatest weakness has always been time. The Zimmerman telegram's ambiguity unraveled under scrutiny. Enron's shell games collapsed when someone followed the money. Even the most elaborate illusions, whether staged coups or deepfake speeches, crumble when light persists long enough in the right corners. This is where history offers its sharpest lesson. Deception thrives in shadows, but withers under sustained attention. So what's the antidote in an age where AI can fabricate reality? The same tools that exposed past frauds: skepticism, cross-referencing, and above all, patience. When Vlad the Impaler staged his forest of corpses, the Ottomans might have avoided retreat had they sent scouts to check the bodies. When Hearst's newspapers screamed about Spanish atrocities, a single journalist on the ground could have debunked the myths. The challenge now is scaling that vigilance to match the speed of digital deceit, which brings us to the final, unspoken architecture, the one we build ourselves. Every time we share before verifying, dismiss evidence that contradicts our beliefs, or trade nuance for clickable certainty, we lay another brick in deception's fortress. The most enduring trick isn't performed by spies or algorithms, but by our own willingness to be fooled. Because the oldest rule still holds: the easiest person to deceive is the one who wants to believe. Quantum computing doesn't just crack codes, it rewrites the rules of deception itself. Imagine a future where today's unbreakable encryption shatters like glass under a single quantum algorithm, exposing every bank transaction, medical record, and state secret in milliseconds. Researchers already warn that Shor's algorithm, when run on a mature quantum machine, could dismantle the cryptographic backbone of the Internet RSA encryption in minutes. But the real threat isn't just stolen data, it's the ability to fabricate trust at scale. A hacker could intercept a blockchain transaction, decrypt its authentication, then re-encrypt it with quantum-proof signatures, leaving no trace of the tampering. Digital notaries, secure contracts, even cryptocurrency ledgers would become playgrounds for manipulation. The irony: quantum computing's very power to detect fraud could also perfect it, creating a cat-and-mouse game where each security breakthrough unlocks new ways to deceive. Biometric spoofing turns the body itself into a vulnerability. Facial recognition systems, once hailed as unhackable, now crumble before hyper-realistic silicone masks or generative AI that morphs a single photo into lifelike video. In 2023, a criminal gang in Spain used deepfake voicemails mimicking a CEO's son to steal over $1 million, all from 3 seconds of cloned audio. The next frontier: heartbeat signatures. Some banks already pilot authentication via cardiac rhythm sensors, but researchers at the University of Buffalo demonstrated how laser vibrometers can steal those unique pulses from meters away. Even DNA isn't sacred. Synthetic biology labs can now fabricate genetic material, opening nightmares of fake forensic evidence planted at crime scenes. When your own heartbeat becomes a password, deception doesn't just trick systems, it becomes you. Yet the most unsettling evolution isn't technological, it's psychological. As deepfakes and quantum hacks erode our ability to trust even what we see or mathematically verify, society might splinter into parallel realities. Conspiracy theorists thrive in ambiguity. Imagine the chaos when any whistleblower video or presidential order can be plausibly dismissed as AI-generated. The very concept of truth could fracture along ideological lines, not because facts vanish, but because the tools to distort them become indistinguishable from reality itself. Historians note how the printing press democratized knowledge, but also birthed an epidemic of forged manuscripts and propaganda. Quantum and biometric fraud may trigger a similar crisis, democratizing deception until no institution, no individual, no censor remains unquestioned. This isn't science fiction, it's already unfolding. China's police databases reportedly include over 1 billion facial profiles, while US agencies stockpile quantum-resistant algorithms. The arms race isn't just between hackers and defenders, but between deception and the human capacity to adapt. Medieval merchants survived counterfeit coins by weighing them. Renaissance bankers invented double-entry bookkeeping to thwart embezzlers. Our ancestors built systems to outpace each wave of fraud, but never faced illusions this contagious. The ultimate architecture of deception might be the one we can't see coming, the blind spot where technology outpaces our intuition, leaving us unsure whether to marvel at progress or mourn the loss of something far older, the fragile, irreplaceable luxury of trust. From the hollow belly of the Trojan horse to the algorithmic hall of mirrors we navigate today, deception's 27 architectures form an unbroken chain, a shadow history of human ingenuity turned toward illusion. What began with forged alliances and poisoned banquets now evolves into deepfake elections and quantum-spoofed ledgers. The tools change, but the blueprint remains: exploit trust, control perception, and vanish before the damage is discovered. Yet here's the paradox: the more sophisticated deception becomes, the more it relies on ancient psychological triggers. A deepfake preys on the same tribal instincts that made medieval villagers burn witches. Algorithmic disinformation exploits the same confirmation bias that let alchemists peddle iron nails as gold. Churchill once said, "The truth is incontrovertible," but he also knew truth alone isn't enough. It must be recognized, defended, and sometimes excavated from layers of artifice. Awareness is the first defense, but not the last. Question the too perfect narrative, the suspiciously convenient leak, the viral story that confirms your deepest biases. Verify before amplifying. Slow down in an age built for speed. This isn't just about spotting lies. It's about reclaiming agency in a world where deception scales faster than truth. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden frameworks, because understanding the past is the only way to navigate the present. And remember, deception wins only when we stop looking. The greatest trick the deceivers ever pulled wasn't convincing the world of a single lie. It was making us doubt our ability to see through the next